the Coffee Break podcast. Wherever you are, whether you're listening or you're watching, I hope you're having a really great week and that you're making progress on improving your work culture. Okay, what if you're the manager of, say, an ICU? You know that you're responsible for your culture. But what if you're the chief nursing officer of an entire humongous hospital? How do you cultivate a healthy work culture across a large healthcare organization? And today we're going to talk to Dr. Dina Dent, who has done just that. So Dina, welcome to the Coffee Break podcast.
Oh, thanks, Renee. Dr. Thompson, such a pleasure to see you. Thank you for asking me to be a part of this Healthy Workforce podcast. It has been very intricate in our strategy for Inova Health System and Inova Fairfax. So I appreciate being on this morning.
Oh, gosh, feelings mutual. So Dina and I have been doing some work together for the last couple of years at Inova Fairfax Hospital, really working with departments, helping them to cultivate and sustain a healthy work culture by addressing disruptive behaviors. And we've had amazing successes there that we're actually spreading this across all of Inova. And to tell you a little bit more about Dina, Dr. Dina Dent is a nurse executive with more than 26 years experience. And she's done a lot of different things. She's worked in these big academic organizations. She's worked in small community organizations. And she's also been faculty, which I think is really awesome because I've done some faculty work myself. And it's about making sure that we're equipping the future nurses and other healthcare professionals. So I love that about Dina. She's currently the chief nursing officer at Inova Fairfax Medical Campus in Fairfax, Virginia, where she leads nursing operations for the largest hospital in Northern Virginia. And when not immersed in the world of clinical nursing operations, Dina enjoys reading, me too, vacationing, me too, and spending time with her family and friends, me too. So we have a lot in common, Dina.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, can you just tell our listeners a little bit about your journey? Because as I said, you've done a lot of different things. How did you end up the chief nursing officer at what is Inova Fairfax? Do you have 1,000 beds, or I think it might be
we
more
have
than
1,000 beds, a 1,000-bed hospital, yes, and very high number of ambulatory outpatient centers also.
So how did you get to that role? And if you want to then talk a little bit about your journey towards a healthy work culture at Inova Fairfax.
Sure. So I started out as a CNA. I was a home health aide, a CNA, and during school, I'll just share my trajectory. A lot of people, what made you become a nurse? What made you become a nurse? I actually thought I was going to be a psychiatrist at one time and thought about teaching. And then my grandmother had a stroke. And I really saw the impact that the nursing care had on us as a family, not just on the care of my grandmother. So that kind of stuck with me throughout. So went to school, college, undergrad here, Hampton University in Norfolk State in Southern Virginia, and received my associate's degree and bachelor's degree. And my first job was a surgical step-down unit after working as an extern or a nurse tech. So, and I encourage all that are going into nursing school, want to be a nurse, be a tech, because it really helps you understand collaboration and how teamwork and survival around teamwork is, if you've had that experience. So did that for a few years. First worked surgical step down in Centera, Norfolk General Hospital, moved to Atlanta and worked at Emory Hospital in telemetry. I was a telemetry nurse first and then did some med surge, did a little float, went to grad school. Thought I wanted to be a nurse practitioner, went into critical care, worked ICU for a few years, did a little bit emergency department, then started the rapid response team. If you remember, that was back in when the IOM mandated that we had to have some form of rapid response, and was tapped by my chief nurse at the time and was like, we need this. And I'm like, okay. Started that and switched from nurse practitioner to leadership because I started to like it. It's not something you really understand or know what as a bedside nurse. It's not an attractive position to see your manager working 16, 18 hours a day. And that years ago, you didn't really know who the chief nurse was or their executive leadership at that time. It just wasn't the culture, you know. So really started to enjoy that. And I had a mentor, and I encourage all, mentorship is very important to have one, to be a mentee and a mentor, lifelong. It's a lifelong journey.
Yeah, I love
And
it.
went to grad school and stayed on a nurse leadership track. And my first job after the establishment of the rapid response team was a manager on a renal telemetry dialysis unit. And that was right after Katrina in Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
So that's when you really understand social determinants of health or social drivers of health, right? Even before it was a term, the impact of preventive health care and disaster care, and the community care example of preventive health. So went through that journey, escalated, worked at Grady Hospital System as the unit director of a medical ICU there. And that was sort of my first encounter with the diet relationship. The medical director, unit director, diet care, and how you lead a department and get buy-in from a group of baby residents and a group of new grads, taking care of the most complex patients in a community. So I had bumps and bruises on what that communication looks like and how to make
We all
sure,
do.
how to make sure you don't forget to include someone in the conversation, and understanding the role that infection prevention plays and regulatory and all of those areas, and IT and technology, and how learners learn, right? So in an academic facility, you can have chaplaincy, residency, physical therapy residency, pharmacy, physicians, and these are all learners understanding and trying to relate to each other from a multidisciplinary pace. So enjoyed that. It was just extraordinary. So I was recruited by a search firm for a position for a director of critical care and emergency services at Christus Health. Now, Renee, I thought I could save the world. If I could be over ED and critical care,
Yeah.
I just world peace.
Yep.
So I thought it was the perfect position for me. Wasn't as familiar with Louisiana, but came to love crawfish, and my taste for seasoning has definitely changed.
Oh, yeah. The saltier, the better, right?
Oh, definitely. I've really increased working out and looking at other opportunities because the food was just extraordinary. So went through, that was a very challenging cultural experience. I am an African American woman from the South, originally from the North, right? And coming from an academic facility and thinking I can change the dynamics in the communication of emergency services and critical care. Well, I had a few bumps and bruises, right?
Yes.
Really. And it boils down to communication. Understanding people's backgrounds, taking the time. I think that's really when I embrace how important the one-to-one conversation is, the meet and greet.
Yep.
Because
so it almost sounds like you kind of went in and said, I'm going to save this place.
Yes.
This is going to be great. This is going to be my legacy. It's all going to be. And then you realize that there are people who have been in their roles in that organization for a really long time. And we had somebody else as a guest who talked about you have to know who your key stakeholders are.
Definitely.
And start with them first and build a relationship with them first.
Absolutely.
And I know myself, when I've been new in an organization, I come in and I think I'm going to make it better and rah, And then I realize, oh, wait a minute, not so easy. And you have to get that buy-in.
You have to.
Yeah. And even with that, you have a little bumps and bruises along the
Mhm.
way, but you don't, I think in retrospect, if you would have done that, it's all lessons learned.
Oh,
You always
definitely.
do retrospective, you look at it, say, okay, if I could do that over again, what would I do? And that serves to help you the next time you're in that situation.
Absolutely. Because, of course,
Yeah.
I was in it again. I mean, that's just how,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, you were.
But along with the key stakeholders, also learn building the relationships with the informal leaders, because sometimes they have the loudest voice, right?
Yeah.
They really can move and really own change management on different levels of the organization. And then that's not always encompassing of your cohort of just nursing, right? You
Right.
have to look at the multidisciplinary team. So enjoyed that experience. Grew into a executive director of operations, and that allowed me to understand professional services a little bit more. So that role expanded with nursing, but into respiratory and behavioral health, pediatrics, lab services, outpatient, ambulatory. So
Wow.
those relate. That was, and they were new spaces for me. So my learning from the importance of that one-to-one really came in handy there. And that's when you really understand how to meet goals and metrics and KPIs from a collaborative approach, right? So meeting metrics is not just kind of a one-man band. It is a group. And really, you're leading as an executive sponsor, but the team drives the engagement for the outcomes. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
More and more, what I'm reading out there
Mm,
and what we're doing as an organization at the Healthy Workforce Institute is we're looking at the interprofessional team,
yeah.
collaboration, and
Mhm.
we've learned along the way too. I actually have an article coming out. By the time this airs, it'll be out, but it's about breaking the silos in healthcare. We're still
Yep.
so siloed.
We are.
And we catch ourselves like, oh,
We
wait a
are.
minute, this is just for nursing. No, 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 no. This needs to be everyone. And to know, and one thing you said, Dina, is so important. It's not just those formal leaders, it's the informal ones. And sometimes it's the informal ones who they may not be a nurse, they may be a tech
Yes,
or
definitely.
some type of support role, but they have power. And if you can get to know who those people are and build a collaborative relationship with those people, it makes everything else easier.
Totally agree. Totally agree. You have your unit secretaries that actually are the air traffic controllers of a unit or a department. I mean, really, when you want your questions go right to them. And
Always.
everyone does. The families, the doctor, you go into the unit secretary. So there are layers of people. I mean, you have conversations with the parking attendant, you would be amazed um, at the ideas that are out there on how we can improve. So that journey transcended into I moved to Our Lady of Lake Hospital in Baton Rouge, and they were magnet trauma organization. Went for AVP role initially over critical care meds, ED and med surge, and then went to a vice president role, vice president of nursing. Um, a Catholic healthcare system, and so was Chris's Health. So really understanding the servant leadership aspect I believe is key, and it definitely has stuck with me that my role is really to serve and support,
Yeah.
is to, remove barriers and help you understand and grow and develop into how you can move those barriers yourself, right? So I'm appreciative of that experience and that logic in the culture of Catholic healthcare.
Yeah. It is really about serving. And sometimes I'll
Mhm.
even write this in my journal, my daily journal. Who am I going to serve today?
Yeah.
Like, who do I want to serve today? When you think about it, you serve a lot of different people, but who do I really want to make sure I'm serving today? And sometimes it's one of my clients,
Yep.
sometimes it's someone on my team. You know what? Other times it's my family
Yeah.
because I have some family member who needs extra love from me,
Yeah.
extra attention from me. And just to be thoughtful about that, as a leader is important, because it also reminds you that even though you have all these tasks that you have to get done every day and meetings that you have to go to, what's most important is the people who we're serving.
Definitely true. You do have to take all of the learnings from different cultures, though. So, along with the servant leadership, no margin, no mission, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, the operational aspect of the job is very key to being able to be successful, operationalize, and to
Right.
encourage and support and promote. So, spent about 6 years, received my doctorate while in Louisiana, and then went to Texas and was the chief nursing officer at JPS Health System
Oh,
in
I didn't
Dallas,
know that.
Texas. Yeah,
Yeah, I love Dallas. I have
yeah,
brothers in Dallas. It's a great place.
yeah. And that different challenges. I tell everybody different zip code. Kind of
Same
same,
issue.
but again during COVID, right? So COVID changed whatever you thought was your leadership style. You had to learn how to be very contingent to it.
Yes.
There During that time there was directives
Mm-hmm.
or mindfulness around how to be supportive and compassionate. So there was the contingency leadership definitely pushed you forward during COVID, and I think it also challenged us with how we went to virtual so much,
Right.
and a lot of us lost that, even almost the ability to have that in person and how to react differently in person. You go to 100% of in-person meetings to 100% of virtual meetings
Right.
in 90 days.
Very different. You
And
look
then
at
now,
like, oh my
yeah,
gosh, now you have
yeah,
to.
it is whiplash.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're now going back to what hybrid looks like, at
Mm-hmm.
that point. So had a very extraordinary experience at that organization. Very large trauma program, and it really helped me kind of add to my learnings from before around the relationship based caring.
Mm-hmm.
Really started to more empower the departments and the units and encourage of what the one-to-one looks like. So we all learn from our student principles, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
we can all speak them. We know every single
Right.
standard when it comes to it, whether your organization uses them or not. You have encountered student principles. So you know the importance of the 30, 60, 90 check-in,
Mm-hmm.
the one-to-one, the rounding, the visibility. And that became very much more apparent during COVID,
Yeah.
right? That your teams needed to see you.
Exactly.
There was no way you were going to drive change and support from your office. It just didn't work like that.
And how difficult was that during this global pandemic?
Hmm.
So, especially because a lot of leadership roles, there were some that you had to be in the hospital, because if
Yeah.
you're a frontline manager, you're there. But
Hmm.
if you weren't, there was if I have an opportunity to stay home and do my work, I, hey, as a human being, we're designed. The default is to make it as easy for us as possible.
Yes.
So if it's for me to actually get up, get ready, drive into work, walk into a facility that is rampant with COVID to attend a meeting versus staying at home, sitting in my jammies with a nice top on.
Yeah.
But to your point, Dina, especially the front line,
Hmm.
during that time, they needed to see their executive leader. They needed to see their senior leadership there present, that they were, because we said, oh, we're in it together. Well, not if you're having all of your meetings at home on
Hmm.
Teams or Zoom. And, lessons learned, great
Lessons
lessons.
learned.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. There were some that when we were challenged with space, that absolutely we needed you to work from home. There were
Right.
some departments, your kind of remote type of departments. Please, we need the space, and
Sure.
can't be up under each other anymore in the cubicle. It doesn't work.
Mm-mm.
But as you start to lift, you start to realize not having that diversity of thought in the same room became more challenging when decisions needed to be made.
Right.
So, and through all of that, I absolutely have been blessed with a good team, good partners, good colleagues,
Mhm.
and especially now where I am in a Nova health system. I think a Nova leads the way, and really, I've worked at other organizations that attempted the
Mhm.
service line model, and I'll talk about that a little bit and what triad and dyad leadership looks like. Now, we are not perfect, but we acknowledge the journey and we continue to grow. So we're very, very heavily matrix.
Yeah.
So, me as the chief nurse officer, I don't have one job, one title, just nursing. It doesn't work like that. I have a group that I work with, and we support each other and we lead together. I have a very active and engaged Rishi Garg, a CMO.
Right.
Unbelievable. I mean, really, we call each other, this is our partner in crime. Like, we are
Yes.
common goals around quality, patient experience, the regulatory. I have a COO, Trish Mel, that's also a nurse, the best operator I've had the opportunity to work with. I mean, just extremely compassionate, and really could do a TED talk on how to manage up someone. I
Wow.
definitely learned from her. And our president, Steve Narang, is the most humble president I've ever worked with.
Yeah, I've met
Just
Steve. Mhm.
owns humility. So I am never alone from the day I started here. I can go on a unit, a department, and around and have conversations by myself, but there are three people that will speak the same language and have the same thought process. So I don't have those other challenges that I've had in the past, or other organizations. I'm sure have been through those challenges. I have an extremely supportive team, so it's definitely we and us. It's not I. Um, Now, there's a few things that I definitely put in place around visibility as it
Mhm.
relates to my role. One I call Donuts with Dina, and it's
I
just
know. I love that. So, yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
yeah.
And then I actually want to circle back and talk a little bit about your triad model, because
Okay. Yeah.
I experienced that when I was on site doing
Mm.
work. And we'll talk about that. But please tell us about Donuts with Dina first.
All right. I'll go back. So, Donuts with Dina, I really started. We have about 40 off-site campuses around ECCs, ambulatory outpatient, where Fairfax proper nurses work, and very hard to the bandwidth. My
Mhm.
helicopter doesn't, it's not running right now. So
Yeah.
for me, so the focus areas was really the Donuts with Dina on a consistent basis to the best of my ability on the outpatient ambulatory areas. They
Okay.
generally start at 7 or 8 a.m. We can have donuts, just kind of sit in a circle. I tell them about me, my experience. I talk about new things that's going on in the organization, and then I want to know about them.
Right.
You know, very much listening. Take some things back on opportunity to do better, but I really take the time to recognize, right? Who's doing a great job? Who
Right.
do you think you can't work without? And I just think that's great. I've learned so much. I mean, we have nurses that used to be veterinarians and that
Wow.
work for the military. I mean, it's just a gemologist. I mean, you name it. You learn so much about people and their passion and their backgrounds with the Donuts with Dina. So I also incorporate that on our inpatient side, depending. So I switch a little bit for inpatient because it's a little more challenging because of 24-hour
Mhm.
responsibility, but we have mission rounds that we do every Thursday. And we do that with the team, our senior operations team, and the entire team. We split out and we do two different units. We have our AVP of finance that goes with us, our HR, Jeff Pratt goes, our president. Rishi and Trish that I mentioned, and we split. One goes to one unit, and we just go over their data before we get there, recognize them for great outcomes, speak about trajectories, tell them they're doing a great job, and then listen. Where do we think the next safety event might occur, or what can we do differently? And it's extraordinary. So very consistent with that. We
Mhm.
also have listening sessions.
I love that.
Yeah, listening sessions. We choose different. We do about 3 or 4 a month, and we're now hybrid. Half are virtual, half are in person, depending on the unit and department. And again, it's time to recognize. We highlight some team members, might read a letter. Of course, you're very familiar with Daisy Awards and Peach Awards.
Of course.
Definitely make sure that's done.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's very consistent. And we have town halls.
Mhm.
And we have over 400, sometimes 600 people on our town halls. It's very
Wow.
high. Yeah, average about 600. And it's, again, our senior operations team. Of course, I have a nursing part. Trish has operations,
Mhm.
and we give updates. But the most part is an opportunity for them to ask questions. And
Yes.
it's over 1,000 questions. And every month, about 3 days later, we go through all the questions, disperse them out, and we answer them. So
Mhm.
they're on the InnovaNet, so you can go and read the
Okay. Yeah.
questions and the answers. So we want to make sure we're closing the loop. We also have Empower 180,
What's
and
that?
that's every Wednesday for 3 hours, no meetings. And
Oh,
it's
yay,
been
right?
successful. We've been
Mhm.
doing it over a year and a half now. A
Yeah.
lot of organizations try it; it doesn't work, but we have been consistent. So expectation is you're out on your departments and your units, and you're having one-to-ones. You're
Yep.
engaging with your teams. Rishi and I are around on our healthy workforce units
Yep.
doing Empower 180. So that's just extreme visibility at that point. So that's just a few things that we do.
Yeah, and I'd like to reinforce a couple of it because I'm always looking for where's the practical strategy. What are the principles here? And based on what you just said, you have to spend time with your people where your people are.
Yeah.
And if you can do something like a donuts with Dina, and it's funny because some other executives I've worked with, like Gerald Bryant, who's the chief nurse officer from Lake Charles Memorial Health,
Yeah. Yeah.
he have Java with Gerald, and
Oh, I like it.
Carl Curtin from University Hospital, coffee with Carl. So if you can find something that is the same letter as your first
Yeah.
name, do it. But that's not as important as the whole concept of you need to listen to your team. You
You have
need
to
to
listen.
be where your people are. They need to know who their executive leaders are. And I want to talk about that triad model because again, I mentioned the first time I experienced it, I honestly, Dina, I was confused.
Oh, I
So
can imagine.
when I
Yeah.
started, we
Yeah.
started doing work with your CVOR, CICU, and CTICU. So we did our Department
Yes.
of Change Initiative with those 3 departments. And we started, we had the medical director there, we had HR, like we pull in, an executive
Everybody.
team. And this was before I think you had started at Inova Fairfax. But I remember one of our executive meetings, Francine Barr, the chief nursing officer from Alexandria
Mm-hmm.
Hospital, Inova,
Mm-hmm.
participated. And I was thinking, why is Francine here? Lovely person. Love Francine. She's terrific. But I didn't understand it. And it was because of this triad service line model that you have, that it was really the, oh gosh, what's the service line called? The vascular.
Well, we have 10. We
Okay.
have, yeah, we
Yeah.
have 10. Yeah. We have 10 service lines. Um, okay, there's 5 care sites, 5
Right.
campus hospitals. We call them care sites. Each care site has a triad.
Right.
Okay. The triads consist of, for the 4 community hospitals, a CMO, a CNO, and a president. For Fairfax, because of the size,
Right.
we have a CMO, CNO, COO, and we also have a president.
Okay.
We have 10 service lines that range from oncology to pediatrics to women's services, MSK, neurosciences. Um, what am I missing?
What's
ISHP.
Right. That's it.
ISHV is the
Right. That's
one
what
you
we work with.
medicine service line.
Mhm.
Each of the CNOs also they are vice president of a service line.
Mhm.
Okay, so for example, I'm the CNO of Fairfax, and I'm also the vice president of the medicine service line. Francine is CNO of Alexandria. She's the vice president of ISHV, which
Right.
is a Nova Shar Vascular Institute. It's our cardiology program. So that's why those two departments that you
Right.
started with, she supported for as our ISHV vice president. So the service lines all have an administrator, a nurse as a vice president of nursing, and a physician. Each service line does.
Okay.
And we're very highly matrixed.
Mhm.
So we support each other in the service line. We have meetings a lot. We share responsibility of growth and development for the business side of it, for the professional development piece of it, for something as important as a healthy workforce.
Mhm.
We share equally the responsibility and the drive and the promotion and sustainability of the service lines.
Yeah. Which I think is so just incredibly smart that okay, if you're a 5 hospital system like ANOVA, you have neurology in probably all 5 hospitals. You
Yes.
have
Yeah.
cardiology in all
Yeah.
5 hospitals, but
Yes.
yet there are these siloed approaches to delivering that care across an entire
Yeah.
system. But if you have service lines, so that's why Francine was participating in the
Yes.
work that we were doing with some of those departments that fell under that cardiology service line. And it made total sense. And so, what I want to ask you now, Dina, is as it relates to a healthy work culture, as you've mentioned, your partner in crime, Rishi, who has just been, he's the chief medical officer
Yes.
of Fairfax, and he has been so engaged in the work that we've been doing to cultivate a healthy work culture, recognizing that there's no one role that is the problem role or the good role. It's all of us. We
Hmm.
all, show up with an intention to deliver really good care, but we don't always show up understanding that how our conduct, how our behavior impacts that care as a team and coming together as a team. You have done that so well. Can you talk a little bit about how you cultivate and sustain a healthy work culture across your system? And it can be, using your triad model, maybe some strategies, how you do that. And I know you and I have talked about how you're always attending these meetings and always talking about what healthy workforce means.
Yes. I want to be very transparent in saying that it's constant new learning, right? So
Right.
there's not what we would identify as a secret sauce, because to enculturate different departments, history is different. Turnover looks different, outcomes look different. The generations of staff
Mm.
is different, right? So there's not one strategy, and that I'm aware of that works. So we are combining a lot of different strategies. By no means do I want it to sound that it's easy to balance your calendar or to be able to go off site to have donuts in the morning and then come back by 2 o'clock
Yeah.
and have a critical care operations meeting. That is
Yeah.
not what I don't want anyone to think that it's a challenge. To have support around calendar management is huge. And I think you mentioned it earlier, Renee. It's management, personal and professional, right? So everything goes on my calendar. The 7 a.m. surgeon meeting, as long as the 4 o'clock workout time for myself.
That's
Everything is
right.
on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to make sure I speak to that it's definitely a journey. However, and it's a journey to continue to incorporate and enculturate a healthy workforce.
Mm-hmm.
But when something works and it goes well, I don't even always have to be the person to speak to it. The team members speak to it. I was
Yeah.
sharing with Renee the question about me bringing it up at meetings. I was at a care site council, which is one of our shared governance meetings, and we have, I mean, those are the, the best, the brightest, the most highly engaged team members.
Mhm.
We had our first in-person care site council. I don't even think I told you this, Renee, probably 2 weeks ago, and it was extraordinary for me to see
Yeah.
almost 100 of our shared
Wow.
governance, largest, our bedside staff, right?
Wow.
It's just, I can't even, I was almost to tears, just amazing. Anyway, they have the time at the end that they can ask me anything. And someone stood up and said, can you talk to us a little bit more about healthy workforce? Now,
Oh,
again, this is, you're like 50 departments, Renee,
right.
representative from all over. And the word has spread. So to your point earlier, we started with CBICU, CBR, two of our most complex
Mhm.
departments and divisions, probably alone 800-900 employees just in those two
Sure.
huge areas, right? And I'm also in that number the physicians. I mean, it takes perfusionists to run that, respiratory
PP.
nurses,
Mhm.
huge. And we're still on the journey,
Mhm.
but the turnaround of the culture is just absolutely extraordinary. When you get the buy-in and have the leadership from a physician champion and a nurse leader together,
Right.
um, they have each other to commiserate with and have conversations when it goes well and when it doesn't go well.
Exactly. And to your point earlier, you're right. You're not perfect. You still have issues. You're still working
Mhm.
on it.
We're still working.
Everybody should, you should never think that you're done when it
Yep.
comes to culture improvements. Never. The journey never ends. And I try to warn people that, like,
Yeah, it
okay,
doesn't.
run the journey. There's not an end point because things change. But what you have done so well is that you had those leader partners, because right from the beginning we worked with physicians and your nurse leaders
Mhm.
to identify what are our challenges, what do we need to work on, how do we do this together. And I saw it was very I was very impressed with how initially it was very difficult. Woo, very difficult, but they came together as an interprofessional team to say, okay, let's make our culture better. And they did that. But it's because they had a nursing leader and a physician leader
Mhm.
who was equally as engaged in this. And it
Yeah,
wasn't just kind of a nice to have. They knew that this was a need to have and were involved.
yeah. I also think the units that have participated, they really adopt healthy workforce in every meeting they have, right? So
Right.
all of the shared governance, the unit based, their huddles and safety huddles, the boards when you go on there and you look at your healthy
Yeah.
workforce board. So any new members of those teams is automatically a part of the orientation. Is the preceptors own it, they live it, the docs are enculturated in it. So that is why I think the strategy that you have one now is kind of each one teach one.
Mhm.
Those that have been successful are able to stretch and to support other departments.
Yeah.
I think that's a great initiative. But yes, Rishi and I try to communicate, at least speak in healthy workforce adjectives as we talk about specifics of expectations just around how to improve quality care. I mean,
Right.
psychological safety
Right.
and just the ease of conversation and what happens when you don't have that ability to communicate effectively. We've seen what happened before and we
Yeah.
don't want to go there. We want to continue to grow from there. So yes, it's a healthy part of our conversation and it's a continuous part and we have to keep having it. Um, we're going to expand out to 4 more units very, very soon, which will stretch us to
In a
include
good way, but stretching.
in a very good way, but it will, because it will be more voices.
Right.
It will be more voices. It will cross over the service lines that I spoke to you about.
Yeah.
So, because we're looking at it differently now, our service lines are going to be engaged and involved from the beginning.
Yes, and I think that's one thing we learned, how you
Hmm.
talked about you're always learning. Even when you
Yes.
shared your journey from you started out as a CNA to now you're the chief nurse of, Nova
Hmm.
Fairfax Hospital, is the learning along the way. We've learned too, and every
Yeah.
organization is a little different. So Inova is different than Kaiser Permanente, is
Mm.
different from Advocate, is different. And to be a little bit more, I think, custom to say, okay, what do you do differently at Innova that we need to know if we're going to partner with you to cultivate a healthy work culture? And that whole service line is a unique opportunity to really tap into the synergy that you've already created, having a service line that goes across your organization. And then again, that triad model too. But when you've been successful, it's not when the leaders can talk about what a healthy work culture means. It's
Hmm.
when your team can. And for you to have all those people asking you, your
Yeah.
front line asking you about or talking about healthy workforce.
Yeah.
I'll never forget working with Alvin
Hmm.
in the CICU. Towards the end of our initial journey together, he said, Renee, my people are driving me crazy. He said they're constantly coming into my office with new ideas on how they can even make our unit better. And they come up with all these ideas on how they can build relationships with people, with everybody. And he said it's a good thing. They are so engaged in this, but they're always coming up with new ideas. He was kidding around saying they're driving me
Hmm.
crazy, but that's when it's when it's your people, the nurse or the tech who works at 2 o'clock in the morning who can talk about what a healthy work culture is. That's when
Yes.
you know that what you're
Absolutely.
making a difference and you're moving in the right direction. And again, you've done really well. Um, as we start wrapping up, we've talked about a lot of different things. You talked about, well, I have to laugh. You said you thought you were going to get into psychiatry.
Yeah, I did.
That's actually why you're good at what you do, because I always say you shouldn't have to be a psychiatrist to lead people, but it certainly helps if you know some psychology. I kind of feel the same way. Um, so we talked about you know making sure when, especially if you're a leader and you're going into a new organization, kind of just ease into it, and
Yeah.
know that you need to build relationships with people first, find out who your key stakeholders are. And then we really shifted to looking at the partnerships that you create, and especially in an executive role. But you could do this if you're a frontline manager, if you're, a director, who are the other who are the leaders as part of your interprofessional team that you really need to partner with, because you can't do it alone? And you have some dyad models you talked about, and now the service line and the triad models. If there's a leader who's listening, maybe there's another chief nursing officer who's listening, or even a director or frontline manager who maybe they're not on the journey towards a healthy work culture at all, and they want to begin, what advice would you give them, Dina?
Yeah. For a nurse leader, your best friend at work is your physician partner.
Yeah. Yep.
When you can engage and be able to speak the same language and answer questions and ask questions and feel comfortable asking questions with that person, and they feel comfortable asking you questions, because there's different components of leadership trajectory for nurses
Mhm.
and doctors. I mean, we don't have enough time, but there's our we are blessed as nurses that a component of our degrees have some leadership
Right.
curriculum in them. So there are some things that we graduate and have some idea around change management, right?
Mhm.
Early adopters, late adopters, what does that look like? How to systematize some things, what performance improvement looks was part of our curriculum to a certain degree.
Mhm.
For our physicians, not always, but they want to know, they want to engage, they want to grow, and they are the voice of the physicians.
They
We
are.
still we live in the area. The physicians will listen to the doc. I mean,
Mhm.
they will. And when they see the nurse leader and the physician champion together, I mean, that's a mighty force.
Yeah, power. There's
It's
power there.
powerful.
Power for goodness.
Powerful
Power for
greatness.
goodness. That's right.
Yes,
Goodness.
it's
I like that.
greatness. It's
Yeah,
greatness because it's complementary.
it is.
It's easy. It's and it should be personal. Like, get to know, you know, my family and your, like talk about it. You know, everything is not 100% what I learned in those one-to-one conversations. A good portion of one-to-one conversations should really be about, what did you do this weekend?
Right. Where'd you go on
Yeah.
vacation? We'll
Where'd
book
you
her
go on
right
vacation?
now.
Yeah, get to know. No, I'm weird. I don't like chocolate. You don't like chocolate? Like, that's a
Wait a
conversation.
minute. Wait,
Not
Dina.
me. Just
You
no,
oh, say,
no.
I don't like chocolate.
Oh,
Seriously,
I don't eat it because but I do like. But you would be amazed.
I don't like chocolate. Yeah,
I don't think I've ever met anyone who doesn't like chocolate.
that's me. I don't eat it. I've never liked it. Now, I will eat a
Interesting.
vat of buttered salted popcorn. Okay. But you can keep the desserts. I'm a savory, a salty people. But wait, you get to know
You
somebody like,
get to know them.
yeah,
So to me, that's, and it doesn't always have to be, because all organizations aren't set up where you have a dyad, or
you're
I
right.
think eventually they will be. I think we're growing in that trajectory to learn together, that kind of mental model learning. But if you're not there now, there is a physician that comes to your unit very consistently.
Yep.
There is a group, there is one, and work with that person, learn from each other, elevate, because nurses also want to work and stay and retain where they feel that they have physician support. That's just how, and docs are the same way. The
They are.
residents want to feel supported by the experienced nurses. They want to know that they're going to help them if they get into a serious situation. So to me, those are it's the power team,
It is.
more importantly. And then as nurse leaders, you all know that, you know human resources, your CFO, your finance people. But for culture change, it
Yeah.
is definitely your physician leader.
I think that's such wise advice. So and to your point, if you don't have a dyad model, it's okay.
Yeah.
Create one.
Yes.
What physician
Yep.
is consistently in your department? Pull them aside, maybe meet for coffee and say,
Yep.
hey, I want to work on our culture, because when you approach it that way, and I'd like to partner with you, because it's not any one of us, it's all of us. And I think sometimes we get into that trap of demonizing one role versus another role, and oh, it's all them, or it's all, this group. And that, first of all, that's not true.
Yeah.
Okay. And second of all, that's not helpful. So
It's
how do
not
you put all
helpful.
that aside and build that relationship with a physician champion, or provider champion? Start in your department and then let it grow from there. So I think that's really great advice, Dina, especially for someone listening who wants to start this journey, who may not
Yeah.
have things set up the way you have them set up at Inova Health System. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
If people want to connect with you, what would be the best way? I know you're on LinkedIn.
I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay. So I can give them your LinkedIn profile. Would that be okay?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. So we'll put Dina's LinkedIn profile, we'll put a link in our show notes. And I'm also going to include a link to the episode where I interviewed Dr. Rishi Garg,
Oh, good.
medical officer from
Yeah.
Inova Fairfax. And you said something earlier, Dina, about nurses. When you're in your graduate program, you learn leadership, change management, all these things. But, Rishi and I talked about the fact that physicians don't learn that.
Hmm.
They don't learn about communication and conflict and all of that. And so there's an opportunity for us to help each other
Definitely.
moving forward. So it's a really great episode where I interviewed him. So we'll also put that in the show notes. So, Dean, I just want to thank you for being a guest on our show. And, thank you for the great work that you're currently doing at Inova Fairfax and the work that you're going to continue to do at Fairfax to cultivate a healthy work culture.
Well, thank you, Renee. Thank you for your podcast time, but thank you for Healthy Workforce.
Yeah.
Thank you for Healthy Workforce. What you did with Healthy Workforce is pull together components of how to encourage and drive a culture. There are these pockets of things that we know we should do and how we should do it. And you you have your Be Kind symbol, and then under Be Kind are all of these tactics that work. They work. And I appreciate you and your team and your patience and, and support
We got to
and
help each other
support.
out, right?
Yeah. Because you're a phone call away, and that's remarkable and very important to be able to succeed. So thank you a lot. Appreciate your time.
Well, you're very welcome. And I appreciate all of the work that we've done together. And again, the work will continue because that's what we do. We try to make it easy for you. We have the expertise. We have a system. We know the system works. We just help you implement the system and then hardwire these principles into the very fabric of your organization so that people are always talking about, oh, healthy workforce, and what that means. And so continue looking forward to our continued work together.
Awesome. Thanks, Renee.
And thank you who are listening right now or who are watching for doing your part to stop the cycle of bullying and incivility in healthcare. And as we end, remember the way we treat each other is just as important as the good care that we provide. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.